Hello, and welcome to this video from the REC Code Manager. On the 24th of February 22, changes went into the data specification in EMAR to improve usability of the system for users. A new look, easier to use, human-readable format and a more comprehensive machine-readable format were implemented in the changes. This demonstration session was held to provide users with an overview of what the changes are all about and an opportunity for questions and answers from our EMAR experts. Please enjoy the video.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all very much for taking the time out to join us this morning for this demo of improvements that the Code Manager has implemented to the data specification held within EMAR. My name's Paul Rock. I'm the Head of Communications within the Code Manager team, and I'm joined today by the EMAR experts that are Mark Pearce and Neil Brinkley. After I've finished kicking things off, I'll be handing over to them to take us through today's session. A few bits of housekeeping though before we do get started. We are recording both the audio and the video from today's session, just to let you know. We'll be sharing that recording with industry stakeholders via the REC portal in the days following the event. While our speakers will keep their cameras on, we kindly ask you to keep yours turned off. As much as I'd love to see all your faces on this wonderful Friday morning, we do want to make sure we've got a stable online experience for all of you, so we're protecting our bandwidth. We want this to be an interactive event. We're providing you with a couple of ways to ask questions as we go. If you'd like to get vocal with a question, you can stick your hand up using the Teams functionality, and I'll let the speakers know at a suitable point so you can interject. If you'd rather write your question down, perhaps you want to stay anonymous, or maybe you had a big Thursday night and you're not quite up to it, you can submit your questions through our engagement tool Slido, which we'll also be using to collect your feedback towards the end of the session. And there are a couple of ways to access Slido. Depending on what version of Teams you're using, you might well see a little S logo up near where you raise your hand at the top of the screen there. That will launch our event space within Teams itself. It allows you to ask questions without even leaving the screen. Don't worry if you can't see that. I'm about to share a QR code. 1 second. Where are we? Here we go. So if you scan that QR code on a mobile device, you'll be taken through to the right place as well, or you can go to slido.com and enter the event code that's on the screen now. And as I say, you'll be able to ask questions throughout the event using the Q&A function, but also at the end of the event, I'll put up a couple of surveys just so we can get your feedback about what you've liked about the event, what you've not liked so much, any improvement ideas that you might have for us to take. And just finally, I ask that you keep your microphones off unless you're asking a question, just to minimize the risk of any unexpected children, dogs, lawnmowers making an appearance on the call. All right, are there any questions about anything that I've just run through? Hopefully everyone's had a chance to scan that QR code or enter that event in there. So I'll stop sharing my screen on that. I don't think there's any questions, so without further ado, I shall hand over to Mark and Neil. Feel free to share your screen, guys, and I'll leave it in your capable hands from here.
That's great. Thanks very much, Paul. Neil, do you want to bring up the slides? And we'll start with those. You might be on mute there, Neil.
I am on mute, yeah. Good start. How is this working? Can you see that?
Can see that just fine.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so if you move on to the next slide. Okay, thanks. So what we'll do today, we're going to run you through some of the new features that we've released yesterday. That's absolutely the purpose of this session. As Paul said, we'd like it to be interactive, and we really value your feedback. Some of you on the call might have seen some of the human readable stuff before that we've done, but we will run through that again. We'll also talk about sort of how we got to where we are before that as well. We're also going to share, possibly for the first time, the machine readable data spec. So I'll do a little demo on that a little bit later. So we've made that available in an Access database, but I won't spoil the later part of the agenda, but that's really what we're here for today. And again, we don't see this as a finished product, if you like. You know, we're always looking for feedback and ideas of how to improve it going forwards. So any suggestions or thoughts that people have, then we'd be more than happy to hear them. Could you move on to the next slide, please, Neil? And again, thank you. Just leave it there for now. So just a little bit about how we got to where we are. As you're probably all aware, REC went live on the 1st of September 2021, which was a very long time ago now, to us at least. Now, the EMAR provided a great deal of functionality and a bit of a change in the space in terms of how we present not only the data specification but also the different schedules of the codes and so forth. There was a lot of work in developing the way that the market messages and the data items were presented, but it was quite clear immediately that it didn't really meet the needs of the industry. So we took that feedback on in early September and started working on how we might be able to improve that. We made some immediate improvements to try and make it easier, but we really didn't feel that was enough. So in November, early November, we had a workshop with a number of interested parties to work through what the use cases were, specifically on the data spec, and we really came up with two themes, one being human-readable and one being machine-readable. Now, we haven't necessarily finished the machine-readable piece, but we sort of set ourselves a challenge of, in February, we would present a new human-readable format and a new machine-readable format, and again, that's what we're here to show you again today. So obviously the themes on human-readable is it's clear and easy to understand, but also that it is consistent across what we used to call the different data catalogs, so the DTC, RGMA, and of course going forward there's CSS piece as well, which we are working on, and there is a working version which is in the same human-readable format, and we'll be sharing that at an appropriate time as pre-release and all those good things. Okay, Neil, do you want to move on from there?
Yep, sure.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to take you through the new format for the human-readable side of things. That is the EMAR as well as the downloadable HTML file we've created. So on this slide, we've just got a couple of snips of how EMAR is appearing after the release yesterday. So as you can see, it's quite a familiar format to those DTC users of old. See if my laser pointer works here. Okay, yeah, it does. So up here we've got the message reference. So that's the REC message reference. So each message within the REC data specification has an MM message reference across all of the catalogs. Next to it, we've got the D number, which is the local catalog reference for DTC flows. Next to that, we've got the version number, and then we've got the title here as well. This is quite small on my screen, so I'm not sure how big it is on yours, but I'll go through the detail when we get into EMAR. And then up here, this information is contained on the same page but below. So we have a data item table that lists out all of the data items within the certain message. On the left-hand side, these data items are linked to the relevant data item within EMAR. So I'll show you that in the live demonstration. And then down here as well, we've got the flow structure, which will enable you to build the messages for your systems. So that's what it looks like on EMAR. And moving on to the HTML file, which I'll also take you through a demo of as well. So I guess we start top right on this one. It's very familiar to the EMAR format as well. So we've got the reference and the title at the top. Again, this is quite small, so we'll elaborate on this when we go through the demo. But it contains all of the information that is on the EMAR page. On the left here is sort of the first thing that you'll see when you enter the HTML file. It's a reference table of all of the messages that are within the HTML. HTML is the whole data spec on a single page within a single file. So you can navigate through the entire catalog on a single page rather than clicking through multiple pages as you might on EMAR or on one of the legacy data catalogs. So without further ado, we can go into that and show you what that looks like. So I'll stop presenting these slides and I will share my screen. Let's try this one. If someone could let me know if you can see that.
Yep, all good now.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Paul. So if you've got any questions, please just stick your hand up or put them on Slido. I'm presenting a single screen at the moment, so I can't actually see if anybody's putting a hand up. So if Paul
I'll keep an eye on that for you. Yeah, of course, Neil, no worries.
That'd be great. So when you navigate to EMAR from the REC portal or via the web address at the top, you'll land on the EMAR dashboard. This link up here will also take you back to this dashboard. To find the data spec, you just need to go to the data spec tab. And to start off, we'll just go through these two items up here, so the data items and the market messages. So when you navigate through to the market messages, it does open up in a new tab. And then on the left-hand side here, you can see you've got the data items and message flows folders. You can go to data items from here if you don't want to go back to the dashboard. But we'll start off on the market messages, and I am going to.
Neil, we've lost your sound. That's better.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's
okay. Apologies. And at the same time as that, I've actually typed in the incorrect message reference. I think that needs 4 zeros. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm just going to refresh this because it's not playing ball. Apologies for this. It wouldn't be a live demo unless something like this happened. Okay, let's pick the 268 because it's there for argument's sake. So hopefully you can see this on my screen now. So yeah, again, just going through the message piece by piece. So at the top here, MM00156 is the REC catalog reference. Next to that, we've got D268, the version number, which is 2, and half-hourly meter technical details is the title. Moving on through the message, again, we've got this information duplicated here in the form of the table, and then there's also a notes column, which will be blank if there's no notes, but this one's got C, Annex C for flow notes. Annex C is one of the documents we've hosted on the dashboard as of yesterday as well. And also in this table, we've got the market message description. Moving on down, as you may or may not be familiar with, the REC data spec is split into scenario variants. So a lot of the time, especially with the DTC messages, the only difference between the scenario variants is the source and the target. So SV00156 is from the electricity MEM to the DNO, whereas 158 is from the MEM to the half-hourly data collector. So each of those scenario variants are split out in this table. The idea of this was so we could future-proof the data spec, and if we wanted different optionalities on data items that go from the MEM to the half-hourly data collector, we could amend this scenario variant. If we wanted different data items included in 156 from the MEM to the DNO, we could amend that scenario variant. Those of you.
Sorry, now speaking of future-proofing, we've received a question on Slido asking whether we're intending to move away from the legacy references to just the market message references in the future.
That's a firm no. We are intended to keep the J, the D numbers, the on-job references, A and B references, and the gas side for at least the foreseeable future. Even then, I don't think we're going to move away from them for a very, very long time. And as a follow-up to that, when new changes are are brought to us, we are generating new D and J references for those new data items or message flows. So hopefully that that answers that question for you.
Thanks, Neil.
I was just going to say, for those of you who are familiar with the gas catalogue, the scenario variants are already enacted, for lack of a better word, within that catalogue. So if you have your on UPD that goes from a mem to a supplier, that might have different data item optionalities compared to the version that goes from the supplier to the shipper or the shipper to the CDSP. So moving on down, we've got the data items table, which lists out the rec data item reference, the legacy or catalog reference. So we're in the DTC catalog, looking at the 268. So these are the J numbers, and then the name of the data item as well. As you can see here, these are hyperlinked, so you can navigate through to the data item. If you wanted a definition of what MPAN core was, so just click on the hyperlink and it will take you to the MPAN core item. Very similar format to the way the market messages are set out. So we've got the rec catalog reference, the local catalog reference, and then the data item name. And then within this table, we've got all the information about it. So the description of what an MPAN is, legacy reference, the data item owner, and then the logical decimal physical length. Obviously an MPAN is just a 13-digit number, so there's no decimal length number, and then an integer data type format. Information on the data type and the data type format can be found in the standard specification document, which is also hosted on the dashboard. Just a note of using the catalog as well. This back button here is probably not the best one to use because that will take you back to the artifacts folder. So if you want to go back to the market message you were looking at, you can use the back browser button instead. Just before I do that, I'll move down and show you the rest of the data item page. So we've got a table on data item enumerations, which is also valid set information. Obviously, there's no valid set information for MPAN, so they're not included here. But if they were, this table would be populated. I'll see if there's a data item in the flow we were just looking at. It's got some, so I can show that to you. And then moving down, this is all the market messages that MPAN core is contained within. So it's quite a long list, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Oh, sorry, John, you had your hand raised there. Has your question been answered already, or did you have one to?
Yeah, I think he's just covered it in that bit about the messages that contain the data item.
Fabulous, excellent. We did have a question, Neil, on Slido while I'm talking there.
Sure.
Could you please confirm the difference between logical length and physical length?
Yes. Let me get my head around this because I worked this out the other day. And Mark, please interrupt me if I am wrong. So the physical length is the length of the data item, including any plus minus symbols or decimal points, and the logical length is the length of that item without those in. So if we had, let's say, minus 99.99, that would have a physical length of 6. It would have a decimal length of 2, and it would have a logical length of 4. I hope I've got that the right way around.
Thanks, Neil.
Was that, I haven't heard you say anything, Mark, so I'm going to assume that is the right way around.
I was on mute, but yep, that's the right way around. And those things are specified in the document. There's a standards definition document which is available on the dashboard. In fact, there's all sorts of useful information about those definitions in there, so that's worth a read.
And yeah, just while we're talking about that, it's this document linked here. So if you click on that, it should open a new tab. And then all the information is contained within this document. Probably easiest to download it, and you'll get a PDF version of that, I believe. So back to the 268 message. Let's see if we have a data item in here that has got enumerations. Probably should have thought about this one beforehand. In fact, I could show you this on the HTML file. That's probably easier. So then moving on down, we've got the flow structures. So on the 268, the message has been split into flow structures rather than just showing the overall market message structure. And that's because in the value rule column, depending on the source and the target, there's different value rules for some of the data items. So if you were to look up this item and you want this market message, sorry, and you want to know how to build it, you would need to reference the scenario variant table to find out if you're the source or the target, and then navigate to the relevant scenario variant. So hopefully this format is familiar to users of the DTC, legacy DTC catalog. So we've got the group ID, the group description, the range. So one being one has to be populated, a star being many can be populated. So you can have multiple MPAN core groups, but you must have at least one. And then similarly on the item side, one being mandatory. Do we have an optional? Let's find an optional. Here we go. 0 being optional, and then C being conditional. So if an item is conditional, or a group for that matter, the condition will be listed in the condition column. So this is saying that the meter cop issue number is mandatory if the meter cop is associated to an issue number. So if not, then it would not be a mandatory item. Just scrolling down, each of the groups should be highlighted in a green, but if it's not, you can tell that it's a group because of the G rather than the data item. Also, there'll be no data item information here, and there will be group information in this column here. And yeah, I think that's about it for the EMAR side. You can download these messages as well, so you can use Crin and create Word document. Download a Word document of this page. At the moment, it's not in the greatest format. That's something we are working on, making a template so it spits it out as sort of the DTC catalog did, in a slightly more user-friendly format. But yeah, that's something that will be coming in the future. So I'll move on to the HTML file format now. So I've got one open here already, but I'll just show you how we can download that from EMAR to start with.
Before we crack on with that, Neil, just a question on that.
Sure.
From Slido. Will there be a replacement to the original BSCP process documents to complement the market messages and process changes, such as for faster switching?
That's a very good question. I think it's probably one we'll have to take away. If there be a CP documents that require amendments, then that would require amendments through the BSC change control process. So if they are referencing information in the DTC, then they'll obviously need to be updated to the REC, or if they already reference the REC and they require updates, then that would have to go through the BSC.
I'm not sure if the asker wants to, if there's any elaboration they want to provide on that one, or if that answered the question, or otherwise, as we say, we can take that away if you let us know who you are and get back to you specifically with a response.
It might be worth understanding a little bit more about that question. I've been picking up on the CSS piece. We're working very closely with CSS to make sure that the documentation on the dashboard that Neil shows you there will help you with additional information you need. So, for example, CSS messages have business rules associated with them, which don't necessarily sit well within the format of the data specification. So things like the developer portal will endure, so we can point you to that but we're also working closely with DCC for additional documentation which will be available and be change controlled, so it gives you the additional information you need. Not sure if that half answers the question as well.
Okay, so yeah, now we'll move on to the HTML format. So when you are at the dashboard in this downloadable artifacts widget, you can see the HTML format here. There's also the access format that Mark's going to take you through shortly. So when you click on the HTML format, we did try to display it within EMAR, but it's not as user-friendly and as nice as uploading it for you to download. So it's held within a zip file. When you open up that zip file, you will get this file here. So hopefully that's displaying on my screen okay.
It is, yeah.
Thank you, Mark. So yeah, as I was mentioning in the slides, this is the first sort of information you'll be presented with. It's a relatively basic file. We didn't want to overcomplicate it too much, but we are working on developments in the future, like potential for adding filters, so you can select the catalog you want to look at, or select your role. So if you're a MEM, you can select MEM and it'll show you the relevant messages, or if you're a supplier, you can do the same. So on navigating the HTML, this home will just take you back up to the top here. Market message will take you to the very top of the market message section. So that's underneath the table we were just looking at. And then the same with the data items. That'll take you to the first data item within the document, which is at the bottom of the last market message. So we'll just navigate up to the top again. Also, you can Control F and search for priority services, and then
Losing your sound a bit again, Neil, I'm afraid.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
That's much better, thank you.
I think I need to buy some new headphones. Yeah, you can search through all the references to your search term within document, and because it's the entire data specification held within one file, any references to that within the data spec will be displayed. So Control F is, or the search function, depending on the browser you use, it's normally Control F is a good way if you're not sure exactly what you're looking for. So moving on to the market message then, they're hyperlinked down the left-hand side here. So we'll look at MM00001, which is request metering system information. It's got the market message reference here, the MM description, the legacy reference, the version, and then any notes applicable to the flow. Just to note, in the HTML version, we've got an API route and an API method here. So those are relevant to the CSS catalog, which is not yet contained within this HTML file, but as of CSS Go Live, it will. So they're blank because there's no API route or method for the DTC flows or the XSPAR RGMA flows. And the same will be true of UK link messages when they're added to the data spec as well. So this is the scenario variant table. Again, it's the same as EMAR. Got the scenario name here, the reference here, the name, the source, the target, and then the owner of the relevant message. So in this case, it's the BSC. Moving on down, we've got the data item table, again, with the data items linked here. And let's see if site visit check code has an enumeration. It does. So site visit check code reference DI50016 and the description, the legacy reference, which is J0024. BSC again is the owner. It's got a logical length of 2, decimal 0, and a physical length of 2. It's string character, and then the data item format is the DTS variant of the EDIFACT Level B dictionary. Again, that will be expanded upon within the standards definitions document if you wanted to find out about that. Also, the data types of string, integer, Boolean are all listed in there as well. So the enumerations then basically like the valid set information from old catalogs. So these are allowable values that represent an expanded description. So if you were to enter 1, you get site occupied, 2, site not occupied, and so forth. Again, if you want to go back within this, the back button in your browser is probably the best way to go, and it will jump you back to the point of the page you were last at. And then moving on down, we've got the structure, so the MM00001 structure, and very similar to what we looked at on EMAR, the group ID, description, the range, the levels at which the group sits, the data item name, and then any information about data item rules. So it's the valid rule information that we looked at in EMAR. And for this message, it doesn't look like there are any. So yeah, I think maybe we'll just look at a gas message as well. I realise I've neglected to look at a gas message since we started today. So let's find one of those, and let's just go for on job. So we can navigate down here. Again, same format as the electricity DTC catalog. And this is what I was mentioning earlier about the scenario variants already being in play for RGMA flows in particular. So here you can see that SV 413 is for asset installation, whereas 416 is for asset removal. So yeah, if you're looking for a specific scenario, which is backed up by the market scenarios diagrams within EMAR, which are referenced in the metering operations schedule for RGMA at least, then you will need to reference the particular scenario variant to find that flow variant. As you can see, there's quite a few SVs for this particular on job. Again, we've got the data item numbers, quite a lot of data items in an on job. And then here we've got the structure of the message. So I won't dwell on this for too long because it's the same as I explained with the DTC. So yeah, I think that's about it for the human readable catalogs, the EMAR version and the HTML version. So I'll just ask if there's any questions for me specifically before we move on to Mark, who's going to show you the machine-readable access database format.
Just had one pop up on Slido, Neil.
Sure.
Those filters in the HTML file would be really useful. Is there an ETA on when they're likely to be available?
I'm afraid not. It's something we've got listed in our sort of development log, internal development issues log. So it's definitely something we're going to be exploring. And I suppose, depending on the appetite for those from industry, would depend on the sort of priority we put on new functionality like that. But yeah, it's definitely something we're considering, but unfortunately we don't have an ETA, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Neil. And will MDD be available through REC?
Depends on what part of MDD you're referencing. Market participants will continue to be mastered by Exasurf for gas and Elexon for electricity. Meter product data is held within this tab over here. So we've got a meter product table in this, and I believe that's for gas only. Elexon holds all of the MDD actually for the electricity side.
John, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, on the electric side, there's some data flows that have the fields you fill out are dependent on other fields that are filled in on the flow. Are we going to see these as variants eventually?
It's so, if I understand your question correctly, if we go back to the 268, so I think
So
that's
if you look at D5, that's probably quite a good
D5, yeah.
example.
Let's find. Oh yeah, D5. Yeah, sorry, my bad. So
if you scroll down, you see you've got action required by message must be present if the requested action code is 2. Are these kind of things that will just sit as a text in there, or are we going to actually see these pulled out as put up as different variants for different?
I don't think in that case you'd see that as a different variant, because action required by message collection must not if requested action code is 2. So that relates to the value associated with the data item above. So I think we just leave that as it is.
Right.
Within the individual scenario variants. So the scenario variants are broken down effectively by the sender and the receiver, so the different sort of combinations of those, with the idea being that they might have different conditionalities or different requirements. So in this case, it appears that it's just down to the value of that requested action code.
Yeah. Yeah, I just didn't know if you're going to go into sort of that level of detail in that, because there is different structure depending on what you're asking them to do. Just trying to get my head around if that counted as a variant or not.
Not in this case.
Right.
I think if it's hopeless, isn't it, to try and make up examples, but if a supplier sending a particular file to a data aggregator needed specific information in it, but if they were sending that same file to, I don't know, their metering contractor, it might have different conditionality. That's the sort of thing where we'd split out different structures for different scenarios, but this doesn't seem to warrant that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. And again, it's about future proofing to an extent. So if people said, actually, we need a new variant for this particular message for a new recipient, so the overall content of the message is good, but we want to tweak this and that, then again, that's a good use case for the scenario variant. Is that okay, John?
Yes, thanks.
Cool.
I don't seem to have any further questions at the moment, Neil, so I think we're happy to move on to the machine-readable element.
Okay,
thank you.
so I will start sharing. So hopefully you can see my screen there.
We can.
Great. Okay, so gone back to the dashboard here on the data specification. So there's a couple of things I'll point out before we dive into the Access database itself. People may or may not be aware of this, but I did want to just take this opportunity. So after our workshop in November, we very quickly did publish a version of the old DTC Access database. So as we are changing the REC data specification, we are keeping that in line. We're keeping that published. We don't have an immediate plan to take that away, but what I'm about to show you on the machine readable access, the idea that we have is that will eventually negate the need for this, because you've got all the catalogs in that one data specification structure. But we're aware at the moment that there are certain parties that use this structure to directly upload into their systems, and the act of taking that away or not presenting that in September was not something that I think with hindsight was particularly well thought through. So we're enduring that for now, but everything that's in that DTC specification is absolutely in the full access specification, which we'll look at here in a second. The other point, just before I dive into the detail, is everything we're showing you today, so everything that's in EMAR, everything that's in the HTML, and everything which is in this access format is driven from the same data set behind the scenes. It might be an obvious thing to say, but experience has taught me that saying obvious things is sometimes required. So I'll just stop at that point. I think a hand's just gone up.
Yeah, that's right. That's Supriya.
Hi, I think I've joined a little late and I've missed this. So when can we see all this which you're showing in the dashboard now, the data specifications?
Now, so this is based on our release, which went live yesterday.
I mean, the link which I can see in the screen when I try when I try logging in, that I can't see the data specification screen. So.
Okay, do you want to raise a ticket with the support desk and they'll just work through that? It's absolutely there, so just need to make sure you're going through the right.
Okay, can you just paste on the link here in the chat so that I can try logging into that?
Well, maybe what you want to do is go through the portal.
Yeah, presumably you've got a portal account. You'll need to have a portal account to get into the EMAR. If you sign into your portal account and then click on in the left-hand menu where it says Digital REC and EMAR, and that takes you to the page where you'd need to be to access that information.
Sorry, digital?
Down here.
The bottom of the left-hand menu there, Digital REC and EMAR. That's the link that should take you through to the page that Mark was just on.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
If you struggle again, as Mark says, you can either raise a service desk ticket through the portal or send us an email to inquiries@repmanager.co.uk, and we'll deal with your query from there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Supriya.
Okay. Right. So on the dashboard, the first thing I just wanted to show you here. So under data specification, downloadable artifacts, we've got a data model. So that opens as a picture which you can download. So the data structure, which is in the base data and also in the access database, I'm afraid is necessarily complex to absorb the scenario variants and all the different data relationships and structures that are therefore required. Now, what I would say at this point is if you looked at the REC consultations which were published by Ofgem, both version 2 and version 3, then this structure is the same one that you are familiar with. If you didn't look at those, then this is quite different from the DTC, and I don't intend to go through the whole data structure because 1 hour wouldn't probably be enough, and I'm not sure how exciting it would be for many of us on the call. But without further ado, I've got it on the wrong screen, but I'll copy it across. This is the REC data specification as published yesterday. So if you're familiar with the DTC and access, then obviously you're familiar with what we're looking at here, but the names of the tables are quite different. So, you know, but they do adhere to the new concepts which are in the data specification. So for example, market messages are all in this table, energy market message, and you will start to see straight away these identifiers which Neil has referenced earlier. The other thing I will point out, and it's pertinent to the first question we had on the call, and it's a question we get regularly, so I don't think there's any harm in underlying the answer again here. You can see here we've got those legacy or local references contained within this data set. Yeah, so all the DTC decodes are here. The RGMA ones are available as well, as are the SPA, and we will have UNC loaded at some point along with CFF. So those are an integral part of that. We don't have a plan to take them away. The other thing I mentioned just on that is, for example, these dereferences are required by the DTS for routing and validation. So, you know, there's no use case for taking them away. Let's put it that way. These identifiers are required because what we've done is we've squished all these different data catalogs into one data specification. Therefore, they need a universal identifier. Okay, and again, if you're familiar with Access or relational data sets, then that becomes very evident when you look at this data structure. So energy market message we've got here, energy market message scenario variant. You will get used to the names over time, I promise, but they are a little bit different. So there are energy market data item, for example, here with that DI reference, and again the legacy references are here for the DTC. So if we look for J, I think it's 003, isn't it? You get the MPAN core coming up. Yeah. So hopefully that's familiar and understandable to people. The scenario variants are here as well. So I'm struggling to find them, funnily enough. Here we go, energy market message scenario variant. And again, here are the scenario variant IDs, and you've got here your source and target. So this data set is very much normalized, so you will need to take some time to get familiar to the different relationships of the tables between them and how this is borne out. Again, I don't think it's really valuable to go into lots of detail here. If there are questions, of course, we'll do our best to answer them. But if you have a look at the relationships, so Access provides you with the relationships between the tables in this format, and also on the image which we've provided here, you can see how these things link together. So the idea was that this was machine readable. So what you need to start thinking about, and we're not going to take away the DTC database, but hopefully what this provides is a database where you can look at and manage all your different data specification needs and validations, etc. with the enumerations. Over time you can build and import using this and build in your validation, etc. So that's the intent behind this. What I will reference from a machine readable standpoint as well, the other thing that we will be working on, so I don't have an ETA on it. It's one of the things on the backlog, and now we've done this release and made this step forward, we need to start thinking about it, is how to provide an API interface. So if you wanted to know the structure of a D10, you send an API request in and you get a JSON representation back of what a D10 looks like, which we're hoping will help people with building their systems in a much more dynamic way and coping with change in a more dynamic way as well. So back to the dashboard, although there's nothing in there at the moment, we do make pre-releases available and they will be in these formats. So obviously what we're doing is versioning up the data set behind the scenes and providing those outputs in a pre-release. So as changes are solidified, then we'll make those available in the machine readable formats as well. That is a bit of a scoot through, but demonstrating a database is a bit difficult. But I don't know, Paul, if there's any questions on Slido at this point.
Not yet, but I'll pause just to give people a chance to think of any. I guess while we do, it's worth noting, I think most of you on the call are rec parties, and you do have links in through your operational account managers who can support you with understanding some of the makeups of the market messages as well. So please do use your OEM services, and of course Mark and Neil and all the guys at the TDA are available and accessible, and more than happy to support your business navigating through the changes as well.
Absolutely.
No, there are still no questions, so I'm not sure whether that means we've answered them all. Oh, there's one just come through now. We may have already covered it, but they say, are the machine readable formats for both electricity and for gas?
Yes, they are. Yeah. So in here, so if we go back to the energy market message, you've got the RGMA messages available in here as well.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Wonderful. Okay, again, I don't see any more questions come through. If you do if you were to navigate back onto your Slido page now, you'll have seen we've just put up a poll to invite you to leave any feedback on whether you found today's session useful. And if you have got any qualitative comments that you'd like to give us about how we can make things better, we welcome them as well. It's also worth noting that we are running a second one of these demonstration events on the 10th of March between 2 and 3. So if you've been using it in anger for a couple of weeks and you've got some questions that you'd like to ask the guys, or if you think that you've got colleagues who would benefit from coming along to a similar session, please do share that link. You can find it via the REC portal on the new REC news page. We've got an events list on there. So please do check it out and share that link with your colleagues if you think they'll benefit from it. And of course, if you think of any questions after the event as well, you can drop them through the service desk and we'll make sure they're raised with Mark and Neil and the other experts, and they'll come back to you quickly with the responses that you require. But otherwise, I think finally, thank you to Mark and Neil for your support on the day and running through this. We will, as I said, make the recording available to you. I'll edit it down and make sure that you've got a version that you can share with your colleagues. So they can't make that hour on the 10th. They've at least got a resource available to them to look at in the future and help them understand. But without further ado, I think I shall close the session, give you 6 minutes back in your days, and thank you very much and see you at the next Code Manager event.